Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining for what I believe to be an eye-opening hour on how Oracle Autonomous Database can help us reclaim much needed space and a time in our database management. My name is Priti and I'm an OCI consultant at Namos. I have had the privilege of working on Oracle ecosystem for last 17 years, focusing on many clients and navigating them through the many database critical issues. Over the years, I've worked on many mission critical databases and have successfully implemented the migration of many Oracle clients from their on premises to the cloud infrastructure. Now, my core strength lies in helping organizations moving to Oracle Cloud, leveraging Oracle Cloud infrastructure, ensuring scalability, reliability, and optimal performance. So that's little about me and the experience I bring in today's session. I am joined by my colleague today, Alex, for this webinar, and I would like Alex to introduce himself. Alex, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Priti. So, hi all, my name's Alexander Wilson. I am also very similar to Priti. I'm an Oracle consultant. So I've been working in and around the Oracle DBA world for around 17 years. I think the slide is pretty much bang on. So lots of experience in and around Oracle databases, also across the business suite as well. So kind of middleware and everything that comes with the Oracle e-business suite. And similarly to Priti, I've worked in and around the managed services, but also doing project delivery as well. And obviously going to be here today to talk around autonomous database or Oracle's autonomous database, and give you an overview of what we feel are the really key benefits of moving to an autonomous database, and how you could use it in terms of use cases. Priti, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So if you are here today, I would bet that you're already familiar with the challenges of traditional database management. The traditional database management system, even the most robust one, comes with its own challenges. There is always a balancing act between trying to keep the performance optimized or data secure or trying to meet the requirement of ever-growing space. So, and that's too in the stringent budget and the timeline. It can sometimes feel like a constant push and pull between trying to save some space and a time. Now, as Alex mentioned, between him and me, we have decades of experience working on Oracle technology, some of the robust databases in the industry. And we firsthand knows how crucial these databases are, but at the same time, how challenging it is if the databases are on the on-premises setup. IT developers, managers, DBAs, we all face these challenges on a daily basis. Whether it's a simple maintenance task or scaling your system or just trying to find the cost and a time for upgrade and patching. So as a solution to all these challenges, we are going to look at the fresh approach, which is based on the same Oracle technology, but at the same time meets the requirement of modern data management, and that is Oracle Autonomous Database. With Oracle Autonomous Database, we are going to look at how it takes up all these challenges and transfer them into something that is self-securing, self-managing database, which is a powerful tool and a solution to all these challenges that we know so well. So let me run you through today's agenda first. Firstly, we are going to look at the introduction of Oracle Autonomous Database, and this is good for somebody who is new to the system. Then Alex will run us through the key features and the benefits, highlighting how how autonomous database simplifies the database management and at the same time boosts the efficiency. He will also walk us through some of the ways we can migrate the on-premises database to Oracle Autonomous Database. Later, I will take you through the live demo demonstrating how we can look into all these features in a live action, followed by customer success stories, where we will show how autonomous database is making an impact in the real world through the customer success stories. And finally, we'll wrap up the session. So let's get into it and start with what is Oracle Autonomous Database. So Oracle Autonomous Database is a fully automated database service offered by Oracle Cloud. It is based on, as I said, the old trusted Oracle database, but at the same time, it can be optimized for the different workload types. It takes away the challenges of managing the Oracle database, but at the same time, it can handle the criticality and the requirements of the businesses. As you can see on the slide, these databases are auto-repairing, meaning it can detect and resolve the issues automatically. It's auto-scaling as it adjusts the resources to meet the workload as and when required. It's auto-securing database, it's auto-tuned database. Again, we don't have to worry about the critical patches of implementation, and the patching is taken care at the regular interval by the system itself. At the same time, the backup, we do not need to worry about taking the databases backup. The Oracle Autonomous database handles that implicitly. But apart from this, I think what makes it truly special is that it's a one-fit solution for any kind of application, be it a very sophisticated um, statistical application, or be it any simple large data set database. With Oracle Autonomous Database, we get to use the powerful Oracle technology, but without the hassle of managing it. Now, as I said that the Oracle Autonomous Database can be optimized for different workload types. So let's look into what are the different workload types and the deployment option we get with the Oracle Autonomous Database. Now, Oracle Autonomous Database primarily supports 4 types of workload: data warehouse, transaction processing, JSON document store, and the Apex deployment. Now, all this type of workload, as we know, have their own challenges if it's in the traditional database environment. For example, in traditional data warehouses, to ensure the optimal performance, we need to meticulously plan performance tuning. Like administrator have to create indexes, we have to partition data, or we have to continuously tune the SQL queries. Similarly, in OLTP, transaction processing type of databases, to maintain the high performance for the concurrent session, we need to continuously monitor the SQL queries, and we need to manage the resources. So, and we know that it can be sometimes very challenging in terms of efforts, timeline, and the expertise required to handle this type of challenges. However, with Oracle Autonomous Database, all these complexities are handled implicitly and automatically. Let's take an example of Autonomous Data Warehouse. It is a service which is named as a load and a go, meaning that we can just spin up the service, we can define the table, design the tables, load the data, and we can query the data. There is no requirement of creating indexes or SQL query optimization or any sort of tuning. Similarly, the autonomous transaction processing databases are tailored for the OLTP type of workload application. Moving on to more specialized application like the JSON one. This service is designed for NoSQL type of application which uses the JSON documents. And finally, the Apex deployment type of application, where this service is a low-cost service, can be used for the low-code application, and it simplifies the traditional development work by offering a free platform for developers so that they don't have to worry about the complex infrastructure, but at the same time, they can focus on the more innovative development work. Now, and as we look into the workload types, similarly, with the autonomous database, there are multiple ways of provisioning it. As you can see on my slide, we can divide it into the 4 categories. Firstly, with the OCI public cloud serverless. Now, with this option, we do not have to create or install or manage any software or hardware. Oracle Autonomous Database take care of provisioning, patching, backing up, growing, shrinking of this database. So it's like a complete elastic service. Second option is having dedicated Exadata infrastructure. in public cloud. Here in with this type of deployment, we can use or take the advantage of the Exadata hardware performance, but we do not have to share the workload with the other customer. Now, for businesses that they have uh, the stringent requirement for keeping their data in their own data center, uh, Oracle offers the Oracle Exadata Cloud at customer option for them. Here, Oracle creates and manages the Exadata in your own data center. And this is the higher level of security we can get by having the Oracle Exadata Cloud in your data center. Finally, there could be some businesses, they have the very high compliance requirement or data cannot travel and they have very high security requirement. And in that case, the Oracle solution is to have the ADB in the OCI dedicated region. It's like having the Oracle private cloud in your own data center, where you can use all the Oracle services without sharing it with any of the other customer or customers. And final option is having the ADB at the multi-cloud. This is the latest one. In this type of deployment, you can deploy the Oracle autonomous services in other cloud platform. For example, we can have ADB at Azure or ADB at AWS. And this is a very good option if businesses want to leverage on the key features of different cloud platform, and if they have a presence on the multiple cloud environment. So this summarizes like what are the different type of options with the workload and the deployment options we have with the autonomous database. Now, I would like Alex to go through and walk us through the key benefits and the features of autonomous database. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Priti. Okay, so can we just skip to the next slide, please? Wonderful. Okay, so a quick summary, I guess, in terms of the key benefits that come with the Oracle Autonomous Database. I think if I could encompass it, it's probably in the tagline that you will see across lots of Oracle's documentation and their own website, which is self-driving, self-securing, and self-repairing. And in short, what this really means is a significant reduction in manual effort to carry out tasks that were at one point quite labor intensive, and they took a long time to execute. As part of the autonomous database, what this means is a lot of those tasks are taken care of automatically through automation within the database itself, and therefore frees your DBA up to concentrate on other things that are perhaps more important than the I guess, rudimentary tasks that come with running or managing, maintaining a database. So a big part of this is obviously through the additional tasks that have been undertaken by the database itself. It gives you lower running costs. But in addition to that, you also have the infrastructure repair and renewal costs are no longer required because you no longer have to go out and source or repair your own hardware. It is all included in your autonomous database service. You can shut down your database instances during non-critical hours. So this is really, really key in that if you have database systems that are not required 24/7, which is the case for a lot of clients, including when you have non-production environments, you can shut these down during hours where you no longer need that. And as a result, you'd only pay for what you are actually using. So this is obviously a good lever to pull to reduce cost. And that is, you are paying as you are going. And perhaps key to performance is you have the elastic resource allocation for CPU and for storage. And so what this means is you can increase and decrease your CPU and storage as you need it, but you also have an option for auto scaling. And auto scaling is essentially, I guess the clue is in the name, and that is the instance itself will scale itself depending on workload. And so when it needs more resource, it can allocate itself more resource. And as a result, when it doesn't need more resource, it can downscale. And as a result of that, you can end up, I guess, reducing costs because you're no longer using as much resources, as you are having allocated. So a big, I guess, tick here is the lack of downtime. So as Priti just mentioned before, lots of the tasks are now automated. So for instance, patching is automated, and you therefore no longer need downtime windows, which were, a big thing if you had on-premise database solutions. So the downtime windows are now gone. Your underlying patching scheduled maintenance is taken care of, and that is giving you a 99.995% of availability, which is absolutely incredible. So you can integrate autonomous database with your on-premise or your cloud-based applications, and it comes with a whole range of utilities that were previously, I guess, nice to have, but are now included within the autonomous database service. That includes Apex, which is for the development of enterprise applications. I'm sure many people have used Apex and continue to do so. Oracle REST data services, database actions, which again is a huge utility to be able to use and have access to, and that includes your performance hub. So you can monitor sessions, you can monitor particular bits of SQL, and you can do all of that through the OCI console. And finally, the Oracle AI vector search. This is huge at the minute. I think it's fair to say that everyone at this stage has heard of the increase in usage for AI, and Oracle Database 23 AI includes the support for AI vector search so you can build AI applications within your database, and that will be supported within the Oracle Database 23 AI release. Priti, if you could move forward, please. Okay, so going back to the self-driving, self-securing, and self-repairing, I wanted to go through each of these sections and just give a bit of a view as to what that means in reality. So from a self-driving perspective, you can now rapidly provision database instances just through a click of a button. A lot of this is going to be demoed a little bit later on by Priti during the live demo section of this presentation, so you can see it in real time. But you can now spin up database instances in minutes. It happens very quickly. It's very easy to do. You can configure it as per your requirements. And it no longer requires the download of Oracle database software, the patching up to the very latest security patch set. That's all just included when you click the button to provision the database instance. So a huge reduction in the amount of time that your DBAs will be spending implementing Oracle database software. You can provision database disaster recovery using local or cross-region autonomous data guard. And again, for anyone that's implemented manually data guard, it's a long and sometimes quite complex process depending on your configuration. This now happens rapidly through the click of a button, literally minutes as opposed to hours and days. So it's a huge turnaround from the days where you had to, stand up primary instances and then go away and do the same for your standby site and then make sure everything's in sync. That's all largely taken care for you through the automated provisioning within the console. So I touched on it before about auto scaling with zero downtime. So no longer do you have to, wait for hardware, order hardware, wait for it to arrive, arrange the downtime to be able to attach new storage if that's what you need to do. You can now just through, a click of a button, elastically increase resource, but you can also allow the database to manage its own resource, where it can scale 3 times the amount of compute, which is a default enabled option. And it can also scale 3 times the amount of storage, which is something you have to enable. It's disabled by default. So it rapidly can manage itself, increase and decrease as it needs to, depending on your workload. Again, another kind of cost-saving, I guess, exercise here is the database cloning. Historically, quite a long process, quite involved, quite manually, involved, quite intensive. And this is now again a click of a button. It all happens through the console, and you can literally just navigate your way through into the cloning option. And once you hit clone, it will take a clone of your instance very, very quickly. I think you can see an example there of as low as 3 minutes for a 50 gigabyte database. And actually, I think you can get a lot quicker than that also. Um, the patching schedule, so zero downtime, your database will patch itself. You can select two different schedules. You can be on maintenance schedule. So it's essentially the schedule that Oracle gives you, and that is regular. So anytime the schedule is up, it will patch itself. There's no downtime, and you will just be on an instance that's now up to date in terms of its own patching. But likewise, if you wanted to be an early adopter of that patch, so for instance, you're in your non-production environments, it's a good idea to select the early schedule, at which point your database will be patched 1 week before the regular schedule. So it gives you an opportunity to be able to test functionality and make sure everything's working correctly before the new maintenance schedule. And there's another fantastic feature here is the option for upgradable database clones. So now if you've got a 19C database source instance, whilst you clone, so via the cloning process, you can also upgrade to 23 AI, which gives you the vector support, which is incredible. So historically, that was not obviously an option. You had to, clone and then carry out a manual upgrade. This can now all be done through a click of a button via the console. So huge, huge saving on time. Priti, thank you. So self-securing. All data is encrypted at rest using TDE. So your data is secure, it's encrypted. So as it's sat stationary, that's covered. You are now fully encrypted. All of your network connections between the client connection and the database are encrypted. So security is taken very seriously here, and it's also taken out of your hands. You now do not have to worry around security. It's already embedded into the autonomous database. Zero downtime database security patching. So we've touched on this already, but it really just protects against the very latest of security vulnerabilities, patching itself, making sure you're up to date, and you're not left where your data is vulnerable. You do not have operating system access, so this helps protect against phishing attacks, but there is no option anymore for a DBA, for instance, to be able to SSH onto your underlying operating system. With autonomous database, that is not an option. The database access happens through the console, and you do not have operating system level access. So again, locking it down to protect you against any kind of unwanted attacks. There are additional security features that come with the autonomous database. There's several not listed here that are really important, but database vault that helps you protect your credentials. You've got data redaction, which is a really useful feature so that you can have real-time redaction of your sensitive data, so that when you are returning SQL results, your data can be protected and not shown to particular sets of users. So it's a really, really useful feature to be able to mask certain bits of data within your database. And I think the bottom line here, around 85% of security breaches today occur after a vulnerability or exposure alert has been issued, is quite alarming, right? So this is really keeping you protected as quickly as possible. When a vulnerability is out and there's a patch for it, it will be applied at the very next maintenance schedule automatically with no downtime and no manual intervention from a DBA. And onto self-repairing. So there's a whole load of stuff here. Again, I guess the purpose of this presentation is really just to give a flavor of what's on offer. But there's a whole world of self-driving, self-securing, and self-repairing options and features that are available. But automated data block repair. So as blocks face any kind of corruption, it's already taken care of. And the process is already trying to identify data blocks that need repair and then repairing them. There are daily database backups to object storage, which includes the corruption identification options for data block corruption. And so your data backups are already in place and be taken to object storage. Disaster recovery is also in place. We touched on earlier around Oracle Data Guard options, and there's the autonomous data guard which can be implemented. But here, there's automatic failover for using Oracle Data Guard to take care of disaster recovery scenarios. Flashback and rewind to a point in time. So really, really useful. You can be very specific around the time that you would like to put your database back to should you ever need to. So for instance, if someone has done something that needs to be undone and undone very quickly, within the console, you have the option to go and pick a time that you would like to rewind your database back to. And it just removes the need for a full database restore. So this is really, really useful. It gives you much more flexibility around what you would like from a rewind point of view, and allows you to pick a time and rewind the database to that time and undo unwanted changes. So really, really useful, very, very powerful. Lots of database and restore and recovery options that allow you to do database restore and recovery options very quickly. So any DBA that's been involved or unlucky enough to be involved in database restores, database recoveries, it's a very intense process, often under quite a lot of pressure, and it takes time. With this, you can now go through the console and you can carry out restore and recovery procedures very easily, again, all through the click of a button. So it takes out those high pressured situations from the hands of a DBA and allows you to administer those kind of activities through the console. So performance tuning, perhaps one of the trickier tasks that a DBA would face on an on-premise database instance. It can be how long is a piece of string, sometimes trying to understand what it is that's running, that's causing performance issues. And then once you've identified that, how you fix it. Within autonomous database, you are already having a lot of these tasks take place without you actually realizing. So they're all happening underneath the hood. The database is forever checking itself and identifying long-running bits of SQL that could do with tuning. And it's also using options like auto-indexing, if you would like to implement that, which runs as a background task. And it's essentially looking for opportunities to index. Likewise, looking for opportunities to remove indexes if they are not performing as expected. So behind the scenes, the database itself is constantly self-evaluating and looking for opportunities to perform better. These are tasks that take a lot of effort, manual effort, trying to identify and then resolve. And the database is actually doing that behind the scenes should you switch that option on. Similarly, to auto-indexing is auto-partitioning, where the automation of partitioning of tables can be invoked. So essentially, when you invoke that, the database will go and have a look for partitioning opportunities and then carry that out for you should you wish. So again, huge amounts of time saved through these two tasks alone. And by the way, there's a lot of performance tuning tasks that aren't mentioned here that are carried out automatically. But these two big ones are typically very labor intensive, time consuming, and this is just going to do it all for you should you choose to switch on these options. So hopefully that's a good overview of the three big areas I think that are really important to the Oracle's autonomous database. And I think it's worth just touching very briefly on how you would go around migrating. So there's several options to migrate to the Oracle Autonomous Database, either from an Oracle database instance or from non-Oracle database instances. So you typically would run the Cloud Pre-Migration Advisor tool, and that will give you some advice as to the kind of tasks that you might need to carry out before you migrate your instance into the Oracle's Autonomous Database. You can then go ahead and create an empty autonomous database via the OCI console. It's very simple to do. The process is very straightforward. It's very quick, and we will touch on that in the live demonstration very shortly. And then I guess you have a couple of options, or three options, probably more, but the three main ones are here. Option number one being a database, data pump export. And you can then use those data pump files, get them onto object storage or AWS S3 buckets, and then use those data pump dump files to import into your empty autonomous database. So you're essentially pulling the data out of your existing instance, uploading it to storage, and then importing it into your empty database instance. Very straightforward to do, not a particularly difficult procedure. And anyone who has any familiarity with using Oracle Data Pump from on-premise releases will understand the process and procedure and the commands to do this. Option number two would be using the database migration service within OCI, which is a zero downtime migration tool. I think, again, the name probably speaks for itself. Very, relatively easy to set up and configure, and you can, through being online with no downtime, migrate your database instance into autonomous database. Option number three, Oracle Golden Gate, again, very similar, a separate tool that you can use to migrate into Oracle Autonomous Database. And you can see at the very bottom, the asterisks, that you can also migrate MySQL, AWS Redshift, Postgres, SQL Server, and other databases using the SQL Developer tool within the OCR console to migrate your data into a new autonomous database instance. So hopefully that's an overview of the key benefits, the key features, really, I guess, some of the big hitting benefits of actually moving your data into an autonomous database, and then how you would do that as a very kind of high level overview. So Priti, over to you to go through the live demonstration.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
I can touch on this really quickly. So there's some useful links here, and it's worth having a look at all of these. So essentially, a lot of the Oracle documentation around the autonomous database is actually really, really good. It's comprehensive. You could be reading it for days. So the first couple of links there is really worth exploring and just having a look at the options available to you. The third link, which is around the database pricing calculator, is hosted on Oracle's website, and it allows you to configure what would be your autonomous database in terms of CPU, storage, memory, etc. And then it will give you a rough, relatively accurate costing for that in terms of a monthly price or an annual price. So it gives you a good flavor as to what it would cost you to run your Oracle Autonomous Database instance. And finally, obviously, security is a huge important factor. And so there's some really good comprehensive documentation around the security and authentication for the autonomous database. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look at all of those links because I think there's some really useful information in there. Priti.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for walking us through the key features and benefit of autonomous database. And these links are very useful as well. So yeah, welcome back to the next part of webinar where I'll be showing some of these features in the live demo. So I'll demonstrate how we can create an autonomous database, what are the different ways we can easily connect to the autonomous database, and I will also touch base on quickly setting up the data guard for the autonomous data guard. So let me share my screen. And the first step is to connect to the Oracle Cloud. We would need to provide our credentials, our email ID, and the password to connect to the cloud account. And if you have set up the multi-factor authentication, then you would need to provide the required security code to get signed in. As you can see, I have a multi-factor authentication setup. So it is asking me to authenticate using the Authenticator app. And once that is verified, then it allows me to get in to the my tenancy. So this is a home page. Navigate to the Open the navigation menu, and you can see the Oracle database under the navigation menu. Inside the Oracle database, we have an option for the autonomous database. Click on the autonomous database, and this page will show you all the autonomous database that you have in your particular compartment in your tenancy. Now, at the left-hand side, you can see the option like list scope and a filter. And these are very good option to manage the display of your autonomous database, particularly in the case where you have many compartments and many autonomous database. Now, speaking about the compartment, we know that Oracle manages its resources into the compartment. So we have to be very sure in which compartment we want to create the autonomous database in. As you can see that I already have a compartment created here, UKOUG underscore demo, where I'll be showing you how to create the autonomous database and where I'll be creating this new instance. One quick note is that there is a compartment called Manage Compartment for PaaS, and you should avoid using this because this is reserved by Oracle for the PaaS services. So I have selected my compartment where I want to create my autonomous database, and and I will click on Create Autonomous Database. And as you can see, it has taken up the compartment. Now we need to provide the display name for our instance. The display name can be a combination of numbers and letters, and it has to start with letter, and it cannot have any special character. So for today's webinar purpose, I will name it as webinar DB because that's the purpose of this database. I'll take the same name for the database name as well. Now, earlier I have walked you through the different type of workloads we can have the autonomous database configured with. And those options you can see here. That is data warehouse, transaction processing, JSON document store, and the Apex one. And the data warehouse is the default option for the autonomous database. Similarly, as we spoke about the deployment types, there are two options for the public cloud, that is a serverless and the dedicated infrastructure. So I will go with the default option, that is a data warehouse application, data warehouse type of autonomous database and the serverless deployment type. Now, further down here, you can see that there are two ways we can configure the database instances. One is the always free and other is developer. Now, always free is good for testing and the development purpose, but there are some restrictions in terms of region and the resources, meaning that always free instance is not available in every region. And there are the constraints on the resources that you can allocate for this type of instances. Similarly, the developer one, again, this is a low cost development option. And the good part is that you can upgrade these instances to the full cloud instance to take the advantage of all features of the autonomous database. By default, it is not enabled. So I'll just go with the default option. Now, further down, you can see here that there are two database versions in which you can create the autonomous database, 19C, and the most latest one is the 23AI. So let's select the 23AI. Now here comes the interesting part. Alex has given us the overview of the eCPU and the storage and how auto scaling is enabled by default and storage is disabled by default. So you can see that for the data warehouse and the serverless type of deployment, it is allocating 2 eCPUs and 1 terabyte of storage by default. Now, if I was to select the dedicated infrastructure type of deployment, then you can see that by default, the compute model it is selecting is the OCPU count type, and the auto scaling is disabled by default. Now, these are the two different type of compute we can configure the autonomous database with. As we know that the autonomous database are built by the compute and the storage that they use. So it is very important how the eCPU and the oCPU model um, impacts your billing or the cost, and which option is good for your application requirement or the database requirement. So to understand it, I will give an example of the car renting model. For example, if you rent a car in the OCPU model for a day, you would be paying for the day charges irrespective of for how long you have used that car for. At the same time, if you go for the eCPU type of car renting model, then you will be only paying for the time you are using that car for. And I think that gives you the clear idea how the eCPU and the OCPU model works. There is no right or wrong. It depends on your workload requirements. Now, if we expand the advanced option, we can see that we can tweak some of the options here, like we can enable the elastic pool. Again, this is like a consolidated option for databases to manage the cost as well as the managing your databases. You can bring in your own licenses if you have them already on the on-premises. And the good part is you can change the compute model. So later on, if you decide that you don't want the eCPU and the OCPU is more perfect for your type of workload, then you can just change the CPU model that comes default by the selected workload and the deployment option of the autonomous database. So I will go for the default one here. I'll just leave the default one. Yeah. And moving on to backup retention. As again, we said with the autonomous database, we do not have to worry about configuring the backup, scheduling the cron jobs, and designing the backup strategy. All we need to do is define how many days we need to keep the backups for, and mention that here by default the backups are taken and retained for the 60 days. Now these backups are available for you for any point in time recovery. So, and that shows how simplified the backup and the restore options with the ADB is. So I will leave the by default the 60 days option, but you can change it simply for the number of days you want to retain your backups for. Yeah. In the next option, you can see that you need to provide the administrative credentials. Now, as you can see that the username field is read only, it's grayed out, meaning that we cannot change the default username for the autonomous database. Now, this is not exactly equivalent to the sysdba role we have with the traditional databases, but this user has the highest privileges in the autonomous database for the database management. Now, I would need to give a password here that is complex enough to meet the Oracle security standard. And make sure to note down the password and the username because you would need that later on for connecting to the autonomous database. Now, connecting to the autonomous database, there are mainly three options in which you can connect to the autonomous database. The first option, secure access from everywhere, basically gives the public endpoint to your autonomous database. Now, that means that from anywhere, as long as the connection is secure, you should be able to connect to the autonomous database. Next option is, again, it's a secure access and gives the private endpoint to your autonomous database. But at the same time, you can have the public access, meaning that you can have the public access for the IP addresses or the CIDR blocks or the VCN you select to give the access to this autonomous database. So it is like having the private endpoint with the public access. And last option is you can go for the private endpoint access only, where your autonomous database will be only accessible through the private network. I will go with the default, that is a secure access from everywhere. Now, as you can see here that with this option, the mutual TLS is the by default selected, and it is the default authentication method for any client application to connect to your autonomous database. Now, with mutual TLS, you would need to download the client credential, and the key in the client credential on client server as well as on the autonomous database server needs to match for connection to establish. Now, if we go for the different type of connection like secure access or private endpoint, we can see that this is not the default authentication method, and we can still opt for the mutual TLS kind of authentication. In this case, you would need to have this. You would need to obtain the trusted certificate from the list of trusted certificate, and that needs to match on the root CA certificate of your ADB. You do not need to download the wallet in this case, and by default this option is not enabled, so you have an option to opt for either mutual TLS or TLS authentication method. So again, I'm keeping the access type as a default, that is secure access from everywhere. In the next part, we can provide the email ID where you want to get the notification or announcement about the autonomous database. This is useful in case there are any planned downtime or scheduled patches that will be applied to the autonomous database. So any events notification can be configured to be sent to this contact email address. I'll just leave it blank for now. And let's look at some of the advanced option we can go for with autonomous database. Now, the first option is it is like same as the transparent data encryption, what we are used to in the traditional databases. Now, with autonomous database, there is a always on encryption, meaning that as Alex has already mentioned this, that data, whether it's at rest or in transit, is always encrypted. We cannot switch off the encryption. There are two ways we can manage the encryption, that is using either Oracle managed keys or using your customer managed keys. With Oracle managed keys, autonomous database will create and manage the key and will keep it in the safe store on the same server as ADB. Now, if your organization has a requirement to have your own set of keys, then we can use them and keep them in an Oracle vault. We can also use the vault at the other cloud platform like Vault at Azure or private key management at AWS as well. So we can totally go for the customer managed keys if that is the selected or preferred option as per your company strategy. Next is, as Alex mentioned, the patching level. There are two patch levels, early and the regular patches, and patches are applied automatically. Regular is the default one where there is a defined schedule for the patches, and the early one would be, if I go for the early, then the security patches will be applied 1 week before than the scheduled patching time. And again, this is a very good option if we want to apply the patches to the one database and see its impact before rolling out the patches to all the databases in our system. So regular patching schedule is the default one. Next one is the advanced option is the management. Again, a very good feature where you can have the database configured for the different character set depending on the requirement of your organization. So as you can see that the ADB supports number of different character sets. Next one, again, a very good feature, like there are number of useful tools. They are by default configured and comes enabled with Oracle Autonomous Database. Oracle Apex, again, it's a low-code development platform for building the Apex application. Next one is the database action. And once we create the database, we will see this one in a bit. This is also called as a SQL developer bit. It's basically having a management tool for administrative purposes for your database, and that comes integrated with your ADB once you spin up the database. A very, very useful tool for the daily data management purposes, and so on. There are a number of tools. They comes pre-configured and you can enable them or disable them as per your requirement. Next one is the security attribute. Yeah. So security attribute, again, if you are configuring your autonomous database for private endpoint access, then you can configure the security attributes. Now, Oracle has a zero trust bucket routing policies for securing your sensitive data from any unauthorized access, and that it does through the policies defined to the security attributes. Now, this security attributes, you can imagine it sits on a top of, so the ZPR sits on the top of NSG, the network security groups, or the security list, what you have configured for your subnet. Um, and finally, tagging, as we all know that tagging adds the metadata to your ADB, a very useful thing for cost management or just filtering or tracing your resources if you have a many resources. So yeah, these are the advanced option we can configure with your autonomous database. For now, I'll keep everything as a default. And let's click on create autonomous database. You can see that it's provisioning. And as we said, it takes a couple of minutes to spin up the autonomous database. You can see on the front page, there is general information for like database name, what type, what is the version of it, what are the lifecycle rules, and what network connectivity options we have selected, how the backups are configured for this autonomous database. So in a nutshell, the whole general information about the autonomous database you can see on this screen. So while it is taking some time to provision it shouldn't take more than few minutes anyway, but I will take you through how we can connect to the autonomous database. Now, while this webinar DB is provisioning, I already have one database created in my compartment. And meanwhile, I'll show you how we can connect to the autonomous database. So there are simply two categories where first, as I said, we can connect using the database action. In database action, if I click on SQL, it will open the SQL developer web. I do not need, and administrator has the access to the SQL developer web. So with this, I do not need any additional software install or anything to connect to the database. And this is very good for if you want to give access to the developer or anyone in the, in your organization, direct access to the web developer tool. They don't need any other software installed on their machine. As long as you have given the access to this REST API, they can connect directly to your database using the SQL developer web. Now, here I can just directly query the database. It's exactly similar to how we have the SQL developer. And I'm connected and I can see and I can run the queries on the database. Now, as I said that we can give the access to the SQL developer to other users as well. So as long as they have the web development role assigned to them. So let's look into that. Suppose I want to create a user and give the user access to this web developer tool. I can simply create on the create user. I can name it provide the password needed. And you just have to make sure that the user has a web access enabled. As long as the web access is enabled, the user get access to the SQL developer. And that's how simple it is to provide access to your new freshly created database to any user in the database. Now here, I'll just cancel this because I don't want to create a user. Yeah, but as you can see here, it lists out all the users that have access to your SQL developer web. And for example, you can see that the admin user has this link, and using this link, they can quickly launch the SQL developer web. So similarly, as we can connect using the SQL developer web, if any client application wants to connect to your database, we need to give the client credential, DNS name, and the connect string information. Now, we can download the instance wallet from the database connection tab. There are two types of instance wallet we can download. One is the instance wallet and one is the additional one. The instance one is the default one, and this is the preferred one because this wallet is specific for this ADP. and the regional one is more for the administrative purpose. And this can be used by the DBAs if they want access to the all instances in your region or the tenancy through one wallet. So let's see if yeah, and see the instance webinar DB is created and it's available. So let's download the wallet for this database. I'll keep the default instance one and download the wallet. We need to give a password here. And using this instance wallet, now you can connect to the autonomous database through any tool, SQL tool you have on your machine. For example, I have a SQL developer here, and using the instance wallet downloaded from the database, I will show you how I can how I can connect to the autonomous database using the client credentials. I'll give name here to my connection. As we know that the username is admin. That's an administrative account. I'm logging in as to the SQL developer. And here in the connection type, I have to give the cloud wallet as a connection type. Yeah. So given the location of where the wallet is downloaded, and we have to make sure that the connection type is the cloud wallet type and text the connect. Yeah, and this is how simply I can connect to the autonomous database I've just created using the SQL developer by downloading the cloud client credential on my machine. So these are the ways how we can connect to the autonomous database. Looking at, as we have mentioned, the performance hub, there are, let's check the performance hub tab. Yeah. So performance tab is useful for monitoring the database performance for the specific period of a time. And you can even download the statistic report using this. As you can see on the top of the performance here, I can select the time period for which I want to check the performance of my database. I can give the time range and the time zone. Similarly, down here, this section shows that how many active sessions are there in my database for that certain time period, broken down from by the CPU or the IO used by the user or the wait events. I can also check that how much CPU was used by my database for that certain period of time. Similarly, as you can see here that the ASH analytics is by default enabled. I can check the active session history using the ASH analytics. I can also drill down for the different dimensions to see how the database was performing for that dimension for that time period. For example, the SQL ID, or I can even check the username or resource consumption by the wait event. So, and again, this is very handy to check the database performance and what are the top activities in the database for that particular wait event in that particular time zone. A very useful tool. As you can see, we do not need to have a separate Oracle Enterprise Manager to work on or drill down on the performance of the databases. This is inbuilt with the database. It is customized for your own autonomous database, and it is so easy to use. So this is about the performance tab of autonomous database. Now, manage resource allocation. Again, we auto scaling is one of the key feature of autonomous database, and it is so simple. For example, in the traditional databases, we know that if we need to increase the CPU or we need to provision the compute and the storage, and it's a very complicated process. However, with the ADB, if I know that my ADB requires 10 OCPU for running some reports for certain period of time, I can just um, select the number of CPUs I want to allocate and apply it. And I can just increase or shrink the requirement of the compute and the storage on the go as and when I want. And that's how simple it is with ADB to allocate more resources and the storage as needed. Now, in more action, we can see that stopping, starting, terminating the instance, everything is on the click. And that's how the easy the management is with the autonomous database. I also want to touch base on the disaster recovery part. As we know that one of the key thing for the DBA is to design the disaster recovery option. Many times we go for the physical standby database. Now you can imagine with the physical standby database, uh, there are so many steps in the traditional system. Like you need to provision the compute storage, you need to install your OS software, your DB software, and then you need to configure your databases for the standby side. With autonomous data guard, creating and managing the standby databases is handled automatically. Now, you can create the local standby, meaning that the standby database is created in the same region, or you can have the cross-region standby databases. You can also go for the combination of multiple standby databases, one at the local site and one could be in the cross-region. And now how we can create the standby database, I'll show you here. You have to go to the disaster recovery option. Now you can see that every database comes with one default disaster recovery pair database. Now, if I want to have the auto failover capability, or if I want to have the lower RPO rates, then I can create another standby database here. Create a standby database, all I have to do is select the region where I want to create the standby database, select the compartment available in that region, and just click the create pair database. And the moment I create this database, we have a hot standby database created for your primary, which is ready for the switchover or the failover operation. And this shows how easy it is to have the disaster recovery covered with autonomous database, which is guaranteed and which is so easy. You can manually switch over to the standby database anytime you want, and the standby database will retain all the features and everything you have at the primary site applied to your standby database. So I think that brings me to the end of my live demo. I have run through how we can create the autonomous database, how we can connect to it, and setting up the standby database. And in all demonstrating how easy it is to have these processes are with autonomous database. So I hope that it has given you the clear overview of how easy the management of the database management is with Oracle Autonomous Database, at the same time providing the powerful capabilities like scaling up and security and the optimization of the performance. Yeah, so I think in our next session now, I'll request Alex to go through some of the real-time customer impact stories of ADB and how we have seen that the ADB impact the customer in real time. So Alex, over to you. I'll share the.
Thank you, Priti. Look, I think the theme here is kind of obvious, right? So there's so much that has been taken out of the hands of a DBA and that is now fully automated and taken care of for you within the autonomous database. And I think the demonstration was a really good example of just how quick and easy it is to manage components, to manage configuration. It's all there for you to make use of and do so very, very easily. So Priti, that was really useful. Thank you. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to really whittle through this slide before we finish up. But we use here at Namos Solutions, we use the autonomous database in multiple ways. But a couple of the examples that I could give you today is we've created archiving solutions that are databases that are in place to enable reporting on legacy data. So it's really, really quick and easy, perhaps one for another time in terms of how you can get data exported and imported. I know I touched on it briefly, but it'd be really good to be able to see that in action. But essentially, taking legacy data out of legacy applications, putting it into autonomous database, and standing that up in minutes for historic reporting on data. Really, really useful, and we use it internally here at Namos. We also have a database, 23AI, Gen AI purposed database for us to be able to run internal initiatives that are essentially using or making use of the vector search functionality within the autonomous database. So we use that internally to speed up and make our internal processes more efficient. There are many customer success stories on the Oracle website. So there's a link here that's been shared. I'd encourage everyone to go and have a look at that because there's some really, really good success stories and use cases out there. And it just hopefully might trigger a thought process to say, well, maybe this is how we could use it or how we could implement it. So I think that is us. We've probably overran by 5 minutes or so, but hopefully this was a useful session. Appreciate it's high level, really trying to give an overview and a flavour of what it is that's on offer here. And perhaps further sessions could be around deep diving into some more specific areas and actually showing you some of this in action beyond the provisioning of database instances. So I think that's all from both of us. But hopefully this was a useful session. We'd love to come back and speak again if people are interested. But meanwhile, if there is any questions, by all means, reach out to us here at Namos Solutions. We'd be really happy to facilitate a conversation and talk to you about how the Oracle's autonomous database could help you and your business needs. But for the meantime, I think that is all from us. Thank you very much for everyone's time, and we will speak again soon.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending this webinar. And yeah, thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.